I spent over 2 decades in the Air Force. I worked my butt off. I climbed the ranks faster than most, and I truly believed in the system. I bled blue, people always used to say, until the system turned on me. Today, I'm going to share my story and how I went from being a rising star in the Air Force to losing not only one set of stripes, but two, being forced to retire, and now trying to fight to have my rank reinstated. It's a story about leadership, accountability, and what happens if the military gets it wrong. It's not about bitterness, it's about fairness. And if you've ever been in a situation where you were punished and then others got to walk away untouched, you'll probably relate to this one. Welcome back to Random Candace Thoughts, where I say the things you're probably thinking anyways, but don't ever say out loud. If you're new here, I'm Candace, unfiltered, a little bit chaotic, but always real. And today I'm diving into my story I've never fully told before, my Air Force career, and what really happened when I lost my stripes, and why I'm still fighting for justice 3 years later. Let's get into it. I joined the Air Force because really I had no other option. I go into a little bit of detail in my last episode about letters to my teenage self. You should check it out. But it was something that I had thought about doing and then walked away from it to go to college, dropped out of college because of some personal issues, and decided to join the Air Force after my grandmother passed away. From the start, I was not just going through the motions. I was excelling. In the military, most people promote at a steady pace, but I was what they call a fast burner. This means I earned promotions a little ahead of schedule, proving myself in leadership roles a little bit earlier than most. To put it into perspective, the average time to make Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force is about 22 years, but I made it in 19. That kind of speed isn't common, or at least it wasn't back then, and it showed that I was on the right path. I love my job. I loved the Air Force. I loved leading and mentoring and being a part of something bigger than myself. I grew up in the Air Force. I was there for 21 years. But being a fast burner also meant more eyes on me. And sometimes it feels like when you're climbing fast, people are just waiting for you to fail. Something else that I learned the hard way: when you move up fast, you don't always have the time or the experience to maybe grow into roles the way that others do. And sometimes that means making mistakes in leadership, in decision making, and in your personal life that can come back to haunt you. First off, I have to set the scene for you. We were in the middle of a global pandemic. The world was upside down. Leadership stretched crazy thin, and I was selected for an assignment to Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. It was one of the hardest assignments of my career. Being away from my children, the mental health issues that I truly was not prepared for. Initially, I wasn't even allowed to go to Incirlik. I was working at the Joint Special Operations Command in North Carolina. I was married and we had 6 kids. We had a beautiful home, 2 dogs, and a cat, and a great life on the surface. I made Chief Master Sergeant my first time. The way that you get promoted is based on a board, and it's based off of recommendations and your accomplishments over your career and your leadership. I had to apply for assignments through a special chiefs group. I received an assignment to Incirlik base Turkey. It was not something I was expecting because there wasn't very many of us chiefs, and there's no way that I was next on the list, that it was my turn to go. But I got the assignment. And then I had to start medical processing because when you go somewhere like that where you can't bring your dependents and the Air Force military considers it a hostile zone, you have to do a lot of medical things. And one of the biggest is mental health. I've been very vocal about my mental health, my adult life. I have struggled with ADHD, have severe anxiety. Gone through depression. I've had panic attacks that landed me in the hospital before, real about my mental health struggles. Because I saw the doctor so much, I had a lot of medical records. And I was not recommended originally to go to Turkey medically because of my mental health. But because I didn't want to be seen as that guy or that gal that was just trying to get out of leaving their family behind for a year while somebody else went, I got a second opinion and eventually had it overturned and I was approved. And then I got there. Now, mind you, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. The world's crazy. There's a bunch of precautions in place. Leadership all over the base and the Air Force in general is stretched super thin. And then I find myself navigating one of the most challenging assignments of my entire career, not only in my job and with my boss, but in my personal life. And then my mom got COVID. And within weeks, she was gone and it is a beast on its own. But if you combine that with a high stress environment, constant scrutiny, and the pressure of leadership, let's just say I was not at my best. I made bad decisions, and those decisions had consequences. Let's talk about what actually happened. I was under investigation for multiple things, some fair and some unfair. There was an unprofessional relationship. There were moments where I should have acted differently or handled things better, made smarter choices, honestly. And I take full accountability for that. I had relationships I shouldn't have had. I let stress and personal struggles influence my behavior. I made emotional and impulsive decisions when I really should have been thinking more clearly. I own that. But here's where the fairness comes in. Did I deserve to be held accountable? Absolutely. 100%. But was I punished way more harshly than others who made the same mistakes or worse? Yeah, absolutely. One of the key incidences that came during that time was a pizza throwing incident. Yeah, you heard that right. Witnesses had conflicting stories that I intentionally threw pizza at an officer. Another said I tossed it over a fence without knowing anybody was on the other side. And that was enough to start tearing down my career because I had no recollection of it. Then there was a friendly slap incident. Something like that in context was completely blown out of proportion. Some witnesses described it as a joke, but suddenly it was painted as misconduct. It was a bunch of small, really bad decisions that snowballed into worse decisions. The problem was that the alcohol abuse, coupled with my mental health and just really being away from my kids, was really enough to break me. And I started drinking heavily. Which wasn't really an odd thing there because pretty much everybody drank. It was a party scene sometimes where people would work hard, but they also play really hard. Unfortunately, I have to live with the decisions I made and the people that I hurt along the way. In January, my mom died. She got COVID, and literally 11 days later, she was gone. I ended up not leaving Turkey because I didn't want to stop the investigation. I was really concerned about my career, but hindsight being what it is, I probably should have come home and gotten the energy back that I needed from my kids. But that's okay. Everything happens for a reason, and life is exactly how it's supposed to be. But it was a hard thing to walk that time. And a week after my mom died, they fired me from my job. That's when I got really bad. The bad decisions just got worse. I was all alone. I was ostracized by my peers. I wasn't allowed to go where I used to go. I couldn't even talk to people that I used to work with. And my boss interfered with an investigation, which started another investigation before the other one was even finished. So after everything, I was forced into early retirement. 2 stripes, gone. And the worst part was filled with procedural errors, inconsistencies, and just straight up bias. So I've done what any fighter would do. I'm taking it to the Air Force Board of Correction Military Records. And my request is not that big. I just want my senior master sergeant stripe back. I earned that stripe. I want my record cleared, and I want to recognize that injustice did happen. I have the evidence. I've laid it all out. How the investigations were mishandled, how others got away with worse actions, and how I was held to a different standard. I even have proof that they started the second investigation against me before they even finalized the first one. And that's not justice, that's targeting. Here's the thing. If the military preaches leadership and fairness and integrity, then they've got to practice it too. And that's why I'm still fighting. I want to pause really quick. If you're new here, I have a segment that's called Oliver's Light. It's where I share something positive in honor of my grandson, Ollie. His light continues to shine, even though he's not physically here with us. And for Oliver's light today, I just want to remind you, even in the middle of pain and grief or injustice, there's still moments of kindness and love and hope. And if you've ever felt like the world is against you, I hope that you remember that you're not alone and your story isn't over yet. I know that it sounds weird because it's like I lost my stripes, but it's not just about the rank. It's literally losing a piece of my identity. I had given my entire adult life to the Air Force, and in a matter of months, it was erased. Everything I had built over 20 years was erased. My good name erased. I did learn that my rank didn't define my worth. I knew what kind of a leader I was. I know the impact that I made. And there's no demotion, there's no investigation, there's no commanders, there's no shitty assignments that can take that away from me. I made mistakes, but I also know that I deserved a fair shot. So know that I deserved better than what they did to me. And that's what this fight is about, so that it doesn't happen to anybody else. The Air Force may have taken my stripes, but luckily they did not take my voice, and I'm not done fighting. If you've ever been in any situation where you've been punished unfairly, where leadership failed you, where family or friends failed you, or maybe where you felt like you had no voice at all, I see you. And I hope that my story reminds you that you do have a voice and that your story matters. Thanks for listening to this episode of Random Candace Thoughts. Make sure that you subscribe. Any of this resonated with you. And let me know in the comments if there's any topics that you would like us to discuss in the future. If you have your own story, I'd love to hear it because the truth deserves to be told. Make sure you subscribe to Random Candace Thoughts so you get the updated episodes every week and share it with a friend who needs to hear it.